Hey guys, it's Josh, back at it again with another video for you. I know it's been a long time since we've actually been able to talk and kind of hang out with each other, but unfortunately I was busy being a dog dad, being a husband, and busy with work in general. So I hadn't been able to really create any new content. I also got a little disheartened when all of my footage from Washington State accidentally got corrupted and got deleted off of my SD card. And so I just don't have any of my footage from Washington State. I am going to post some of the pictures at the end of the video of Washington State so you guys can at least see what I took while I was there. And I really loved going to Washington State, whether it was the Hoh Rainforest or whether it was Mount Rainier, going to the Palouse and seeing the beautiful rolling hills of wheat fields. It was absolutely incredible trip, and highly recommend anyone going are thinking about going to Washington State or Oregon or the Pacific Northwest. Highly recommend it. Maybe once all the wildfires are done and once, you know, temperatures come back down to not the surface of the sun, highly recommend you go over there. It is beautiful. It is amazing. 100% recommend. Enough about Washington State. That's not what this video is about. This video is about the Nikon Z6 Mark II. I got to borrow a Nikon from one of my buddies, one of my coworkers. He let me borrow his Z6 Mark II and the 24 to 200 millimeter lens on a trip that my wife and I took to celebrate her graduating with her master's. We took a trip to Gatlinburg, Tennessee. I totally forgot to actually record any footage of Gatlinburg, so we did also go to Great Smoky Mountains National Park. And I do have some absolutely amazing photographs from Great Smoky Mountain National Park, as well as Cades Cove, which is part of the park. And it's this beautiful drive-through, like 11-mile loop that you can go through where it's actually a nature preserve. So there's bear and elk and deer all over the place, just kind of walking in and out of everybody's traffic. And it's really cool. And while we were there, we actually got to see a bear off in the distance. 200 millimeters was nowhere near close enough to actually capture the bear, but it was very cool to see the bear with our own eyes. It was a little black bear. It was a mama and 2 cubs, if I remember correctly. So that was pretty cool. And I used this camera while we were up there. I kind of wanted to take it from the perspective of somebody buying a vacation camera and lens, like a lens and a camera combination that you would take on vacation with you. Because that's what this was for us. It was a vacation. It was a way to get away from Georgia and just kind of get back and kind of spend time with each other and that kind of stuff. So I took it out while we were out in Cades Cove. Absolutely fell in love with the camera. I think the 24 megapixel sensor that it has is an absolutely insanely good sensor. It's got great dynamic range, great in low light situations, high ISOs. You see very little noise. In fact, oddly enough, less noise than what you see out of my A7R IV from Sony. And I'll get to that later on. You have an incredible battery life out of it. I think the SIPA rating is like around 500 shots per charge. But I can guarantee you it's going to be much more than that. I took about 400 shots, and on this little Nikon EN-EL15C battery, I took about 400 shots out of the camera, and I don't even think I got down to lower than 90% charge. So I don't think the SIPA rating is anywhere close to being right. I think that they are being way too cautiously conservative on that number. The next thing that I want to talk about is kind of what my expectations were and where they met and what I liked and what I didn't like. My expectations for this camera was that it was going to be okay. It wasn't going to be an amazing experience. It wasn't going to compare to the Sony or the Canon that I shoot with. And I think I was completely wrong. I think that the shooting experience exceeds that of a Sony and matches that of a Canon. I think that the user experience that you get out of this camera is incredibly good. It's incredibly intuitive. The menu system makes sense. It's all touchscreen, which was really nice to have. I could thumb through all the menus and tap just like I would on my smartphone. I was able to do all of that on the camera too. And not having that I never realized how big of a deal it was until I did have it, and now going back to the Sony is a little hard because I don't have the touchscreen menu system, and now I kind of wish I did. The other thing I really liked about it is how well the camera feels in the hand. The grip is large, but it's not too beefy that my smaller, medium-sized hands don't grip around it very well. As you can see here, my hand grips incredibly natural. My finger immediately wants to go straight to the shutter button, and the hand and the lens are decently far apart, so I'm not like curled up on it, which is what I'm used to having to do. There are two buttons on the very front of the camera. You have a function 1 and a function 2. I personally never use these. I accidentally would hit them all the time. So that was one of the design flaws that I did find, is I accidentally would hit these buttons all the time. I don't know if that was intentional by Nikon or if that was a design flaw, like an oversight by them. But nonetheless, it's there. Be mindful of it if you will shoot with any of the Nikon Z cameras. You do have these two little buttons down here at the bottom that you might accidentally press if you aren't careful. It has a screen on the top. I don't know if it's any useful on the camera, because it shows you your ISO settings, your aperture settings, and your shutter settings. But I can see all that on the back screen or in the viewfinder, whichever one I happen to be using at the time. So I don't really know the purpose of the screens. My Canon EOS R also has that, but at the very least, that one, like, it's also the mode dot. It's where you see what mode you're in, and if you're shooting in bulb mode, you can see how long the shutter's gone. So if I know I'm taking a 2-minute long exposure, I can literally look at it and see 2 minutes and then click turn off. This one does not have that capability. Wish it did. I thought that was kind of one of the oh man kind of features there. The menu system, as I said, is very intuitive, very easy. One of the things that I really liked about it is you do have focus stacking built right into the camera. You don't have to constantly, tap, take a picture, tap, take a picture, tap, take a picture. You just literally tell it, I want it to start from point A to point B, and I want 5 shots. And it will just automatically take those 5 shots for you and put them into a separate folder for you. Really easy, really intuitive. Then it also has bracketing built right in, and time-lapse built right in. Now, the Sonys and the Canons also have intervalometers built into their cameras, but they don't have time-lapse built into their cameras. And the intervalometer, the difference is time-lapse puts it into a MP4 file for you, where the intervalometer just creates JPEGs for you, and then you have to create the MP4 on a computer in post-editing, whereas this one just automatically puts it into an MP4 format for you, creates the video file for you. I thought that was really nice to have. Makes it really easy for those that do create a lot of time lapses, and you can do it in 4K or you can do it in 1080p. The other things that I like about it are the autofocus system is very good. I would put it on par with the Canon dual pixel. Maybe not the dual pixel 2.0, because that is on a whole nother level, like that's in the R6 and the R5, but it's as good as what you find out of like the 5D or the 90D. One of the interesting quirks I did find about the autofocus system is where, like Sony and Canon, the little box that goes around your subject's eye, that box is very sticky to your subject on Sony and Canon. On Nikon, it wasn't as sticky, but it was keeping you in focus. So it was doing it even though the box wasn't showing it was doing it, which to me is okay, but I would prefer it would keep up. I don't know if that's a processor issue or if a software issue, but it would be nice if it would keep up with the autofocus system, because the lens and the motors and the lenses, they're keeping up. The camera's keeping up with the autofocus. It's just not showing that it's keeping up with the autofocus. And so it's hard to trust it almost, because you're like, did I get the shot? Did I not get the shot? Do I need to redo the shot? I'm not entirely sure. It got the shot. I thought it did a very good job of keeping track of subjects, even if they were coming in and out of frame. it did a really good job of just tracking subjects. Like if I'm moving towards the camera or if I'm moving away from the camera, it did a great job of just recognizing this is a person, this is an eye, let's track that eye. All right, so now that I've kind of talked about what I do like and what I don't like about the camera, I am going to talk about something that I wasn't expecting, which is to kind of question whether or not high-resolution cameras are actually great for landscape photography or not. I always was of the belief that with landscape photographers, we want as much resolution as we possibly can, so if we need to crop, we can. After using this camera and seeing something that I wasn't expecting, which was, one, if you get it right in camera, you don't need a crop. Two, the shadows of your images had less noise than a higher resolution camera. One of the things that I was noticing when I was comparing the shadow detail from the pictures I took with my Sony at Washington State and the pictures I took with this at Great Smoky Mountains was the shadows had less noise here than they did with my Sony. And that's an interesting thing. That's an interesting concept that I wasn't expecting to kind of have. And so now this begs the question, are high resolution cameras the best way to go? And I'm going to make the argument that they're not. I kind of did some research and I kind of looked up pixel density and how that affects light gathering capabilities. And one of the things that I learned was higher res cameras, while can give you more detail, you'll be able to see every single pine needle on a pine tree that's 100 yards away. You're not getting the sharpest version of that. Sometimes you don't need that detail. Sometimes it's better to have the detail in the rocks that are your foreground, that's your actual subject of your photograph. Having the detail in the shadows there is more important than having the details in the pine needles that are your background, where they don't matter as much. And then also high resolution cameras typically have to be shot at faster shutter speeds because they have to be able to account for all camera blur. And the camera blur that's there is accentuated with higher resolution cameras, where they're not accentuated with lower resolution cameras. So it's one of those things that it's not the end of the world to have a low res camera. And this brings me to my current conundrum. One of the things that I've currently been thinking, and it's kind of been a back of my mind, not really brought it up to anybody recently, was I kind of hate the shooter experience on Sony. I kind of hate the menu system. I hate the way Sony approaches photographers. Sony's are video first, photographer second. And I'm the opposite. I'm a photographer first, videographer second. And it was a breath of fresh air to see a camera company like Nikon, or to use my EOS R from Canon, where they do take photographers into consideration when they do things, when they set up their menus, when they set up the way that their cameras work and all the features that their cameras have. It kind of is built more for photography than what the Sonys are. And don't get me wrong, I love the image quality that I can get with the Sonys, and I love the cheaper lenses that I can get with Sonys, but it's not a great experience. And that's one of the things I've been wrestling with in my mind for a couple of weeks now. Even before I went to Gatlinburg last week, it was one of those things I kind of was always in the back of my mind. Maybe in a year or two I'll switch over to Canon and I'll get an R6 instead of and sell my A7R IV. But I think this might have accelerated it. This is one of those things, those watershed moments where I think I want to go back to Canon. And I think I'm going to sell all my Sony glass and my A7R IV. And it's a possibility. I got to talk to the wife first, so don't burn bridges yet. Don't, burn the town down saying, Josh is switching, this is the end of the world. No, it's really not. You got to talk to the wife first and kind of crunch some numbers and make sure I don't lose too much money by making this switch back over to Canon. But I think for the experience that I'm going to have with the camera, I think Canon's going to provide a better experience than what Sony has provided. The way I kind of liken it is the difference between Android phones and iPhones. Android phones are very, very tech savvy and very, very technologically advanced, where iPhones may not get all the features and have all of the most advanced technology, but the user experience is damn near perfect. And that's kind of how I'm viewing Canon and Sony right now. I think Sony kind of has the better technology with the higher resolution cameras. It has the better autofocus. It's got the better, you know, speed on the cameras, and their dynamic range is just the absolute best you can possibly get. Their user experience is shit. And there's no other way to put it. It's shit. It's bad. It's a clunky and outdated system from what feels like the 90s, even though of course it's way newer than the 90s. But that's not a good thing when your menu system feels like it's the 90s and we're in the 2020s. Update the system, Sony. Update the system. Where Canons, I always feel like it's a very smooth and intuitive system that it's easy to find what I'm looking for when I'm looking for it. I don't have to fight the camera. I don't have to spend 20 minutes scrolling through 15 pages to find the one thing, then to find out that one thing is grayed out. And then I got to figure out why is it grayed out, where on the Canon, it's not that difficult. So it's the small things that just slowly are adding up to me that are making me go, it might not be a bad idea to switch over to Canon. And, you know, we'll see. Maybe I've got gas or gear acquisition syndrome where I want a new camera. And I'm trying to justify ways to get that new camera. I don't know. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. We'll see. Maybe I'll just learn to live with what Sony's given me and just appreciate the 61 megapixels that I have. But it's food for thought. I am curious what you guys shoot with down below. Tell me if it is a good idea to shoot with Canon or to switch over to Canon, or is it a bad idea? Should I stick with Sony? Or should I just throw both of them to the wind and go with Nikon? I'm not gonna. But all in all, I think the Z6 Mark II is an absolutely stellar camera. I feel like it is an absolutely incredible piece of technology that Nikon has created, and it was a very positive experience I got from shooting with the Nikon. So without further ado, I'm going to end the video here. Hopefully I will be able to go out hiking a little bit more. I'm not entirely sure with just how insanely hot it is. We're not Pacific Northwest levels hot, but we are pretty hot here in Georgia right now. So I'm gonna play it by ear on some days. If I get a couple days of rain in a row and then it cools everything down, I might go out then. But as of right now, it's too hot. I don't want to be out in 90-degree weather with 95% humidity. That's not fun. That's not fun at all. So hopefully if I don't get any hiking done before the fall, I'll just create content constantly talking about more cameras, and maybe I do switch. Maybe I create a video series of me switching and what I like about the new R6 and what I don't like about the R6. I'm not sure yet. Again, this is a whole new realm for me almost. Anyways, guys, without further ado, comment, like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. So next time, cheers.